Makes me feel good inside.
Well, that's
right,
good.
here we go. Let's do it.
All righty. Okay, let's get started. All right. Hello, everybody. Hi. Thank you so much for joining our Sips with Spartan. So we were hoping that we were going to be able to take this September Sips with Spartan and talk about all things the summit and fun stuff. Because as you guys know, if you've been watching over the months, last few months, that we've been kind of immersed in the COVID situation. Yeah. Well, September's no different. So unfortunately, yes. Yeah, so but before we get into this eviction moratorium and our awesome guests, I do want to take the opportunity, if you are listening and you have not registered for our Spartan Summit, it's in 2 weeks. And it's a virtual event. We've got some great speakers that are talking on a wide variety of topics, from lending to tax benefits, real estate. We've got commercial real estate. I mean, just all different strategy banking. Yeah, so all different kinds of strategies. So it's a great opportunity. And if you can't make the 2 days, it's October 8th and 9th. If you cannot make the 2 days to virtually attend, you can still buy a ticket and get all of the videos of the presentations from the speakers, all the content. Yeah, so if you are interested, go to SpartanInvest.com, and there's a summit page that you can register and get your tickets. So I will dive in. I'm Lindsay Davis, and I have with me, as you remember from last month's SIP, Stephanie Devine, our Director of Property Management.
Good to see everybody again.
Yeah, you didn't think you'd be back so soon.
I didn't, and I was very surprised, but excited at the same time. Excited to,
drink some more.
Drink at work.
That's why she's here.
It's true. It's for the booze.
And then we also have, I'm very, very excited that we've got Miranda Maxim joining us today. She's our AR manager for our Alabama Rental Property, or Property Management Division. So I'll be quiet and you introduce yourself.
Okay, well, as Lindsay stated, I am Miranda Maxim. I am the AR manager for Alabama Rental Property, and I am responsible for anything and everything that is rent related. I manage our approvals team along with the application process and making sure that we get the right tenants in your property that qualify. And then I'm also responsible for the AR team itself in terms of just making sure that your tenants pay their rent on time. I deal with our attorneys, anything and everything that's, eviction related in that unfortunate circumstance. And I'm just here to protect your investment. So.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. And she is definitely well versed in this eviction moratorium. We're having her on here because she has been living in the nitty gritty of this. And you guys can see we have tons of notes here and note cards, because this is new to everyone and it affects anyone who owns real estate. So obviously any kind of order or mandate that halts evictions is very important to anybody that owns real estate. We need to know as much about it as possible. So just bear with us, because we are going to get into the nitty gritty. So if you don't know what in the world I'm talking about, I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie really quick to talk about what are we talking about. This eviction moratorium order, what is that? When did it happen, and kind of why is it so important? Why are we here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and like Lindsay said, it's a moving target, and there's so many details, and we could truly and honestly talk about this all day if we had the time, and surely you'd be bored by then. But yeah, just to kind of give you guys the overarching, kind of directives of it. We've been learning this with everybody else, along with the attorneys, along with the judges, along with everyone. This is brand new, uncharted territory for every single person out there, because it's the first time that anything like this has ever happened, and hopefully the last time. Yeah. But we've had daily interactions with our attorneys, in-person meetings. We've been on Zoom calls. We've been on forums with the different associations, chapters, all the groups that we're members of, all of the meetings, anything that we can be a part of, we are attending. And I mean, Miranda's been on countless calls with our attorney every single day, because truly every day a new situation comes up, and we've just been consuming this 36-page order as much as we can to find out as much as we can for our investors, so we can relay the proper information, and not only that, but to follow all the rules. So yeah, it's been a lot.
So what is the moratorium?
Okay, so diving into the actual moratorium, with all of the concerns that COVID has brought up, obviously we want to do our best to protect the public health and all of that, and that's kind of where the CDC came into play. And so it announced this order in efforts to prevent misplacement and homelessness and further spread of the disease unnecessarily, essentially. And so under section 361 of the Public Health Service Act, the CDC was able to provide this order in order to halt the eviction process, to halt the further spread of the disease as much as possible, because homelessness leads to people in small places and homeless shelters and things like that, and obviously we want to do everything we can to prevent that as well. So with that being said, what they did was halt all evictions up until December 31st, where the tenant was affected by COVID-19 directly. And with that, there are some things that the tenant is being held accountable for in order to proclaim, hey, yes, I have been affected by COVID-19, and I will definitely be part of the homelessness situation or be forced into a shelter or some sort of situation where, it could potentially jeopardize the health of others. And so there are 7 criteria and pieces of information that the tenant needs to understand by signing this declaration that we are able, under penalty of perjury, to challenge. So those 7 criteria are making sure that they have been applying for government assistance and aid to pay their rent, to pay their bills. Also, income requirements, that they have made less than a certain amount per year and that they would have qualified for a stimulus check, that they are unable to pay their rent due to circumstances related to COVID-19, job loss, hours cut, etc. Also, that they're currently making their best efforts to pay their rent, whether that's $10 here, $10 there, half a rental payment, that they are making some sort of visible effort to pay their rent. And if affected, that they would potentially become homeless or be forced into an unnecessary situation that could further spread the disease. And then also they have to sign understanding that they understand that the rent is still due, that they must still pay their rent. There's a lot of education that's going on around this as well. People think, oh, I'm scot-free until the end of the year. No, that's not the situation. So when they sign, they understand they have to still pay, and that they further understand that at the end of this temporary halt, the rent will be called due and that the process will start again. And so there are a lot of things, and we're trying to make our best efforts to educate them on this too, because if they, a lot of times people see, oh, stop eviction, sign away. No, that's not the case. So we really need to be careful around this and make sure that we're doing all that we can do to make sure we're following guidelines and everything. So
that's basically the order that says, hey, there's a halt on evictions. Okay, and one thing that we need to stomp up and down and shout it from the rooftops is that, yes, there is the eviction moratorium that happened on September 4th of this year. However, it is still business as usual.
Yes.
Only if the tenant says, yes, I've been affected, that's when it stops.
Yep, when they sign that declaration.
Right, when they sign that declaration. And we are going to get into the nitty-gritty of what the declaration looks like. What can we do about it? What are our options? What are the potential consequences for our investors or for anyone owning real estate? But first, I know Stephanie talked about it last time in SIPS, but I want Miranda to, she's living and breathing it. You guys are really getting the fruits of her labor, because
this is the real deal.
Right. I do want to preface that we're not lawyers, but she's about as close as you can get.
In-house counsel right here.
So walk us through 2019.
Oh, the good old days.
Oh, the good old days. But what a normal, outside of COVID, eviction process looks like, just so everyone listening can kind of reference how that process has changed?
No, of course. A normal eviction process starts with the posting of the eviction notice. It's a 7-day termination notice. It's 7 business days, not 7 calendar days. So the 7 business days, starts the day after the notice is posted. If the tenant has not cleared their balance within those 7 business days or has not made an acceptable arrangement with myself, then I will go ahead and send them over to the attorney for eviction to have the unlawful detainer filed against them. Once the unlawful detainer is filed, at that point, we wait for a possession case at the courthouse. And that's a date that's given to us by a judge on the docket to obtain possession of our property back. Once that happens, normally we give 7 days for the tenant to vacate the property. And then on that day, if they have not vacated that property, we confirm, have they vacated? Are they still there? If they are still there at that point, they're in violation of the court order from a judge. And at that point, then we let the attorney know, go ahead, file that writ for stat out with the sheriff's department because they gotta go. Normally evictions in the good old days ranges anywhere from about 90 to 120 days from the filing to us getting possession of the property back. Normal days.
Normal days. Right. And I know that we've talked, and if you guys have joined us with in the past, and that how surprised we were back in March and April, May, just how I don't want to say how little, but we were very surprised at how many people were still paying rent, everything had shut down. So kind of same. So walk us through what eviction is supposed to look like, not eviction, I'm sorry, I'm messing you up. What our AR has looked like normally, and then what it looked like back in March and for just like last month. So you guys get a gauge of what our typical eviction rate and AR collection percentages are.
No, of course. Normally our eviction percentage, we like to keep it under 1%. We went from 0.9% for evictions. As of today's date, we're at 1.3, and this is something that coming into this, we were expecting it. We're suited up, we're ready to deal with the increase in eviction. And AR, like Lindsay stated previously, it did come as a bit of a surprise to us that it did not seem like all of our tenants were as affected as what we were expecting them to be, especially compared to a nationwide level. Our AR back in March and April was at 7%. It's a little bit higher than what I personally like to see that number at. But I mean, then again, shockingly, June, July, 5% AR, 5%. So I think that speaks to the methods that our team uses to be compassionate with our tenants during these rough times and work with them and let them know that we are here for them. Yes, we do have expectations on their rental payment. It is due on the 1st, but we are here for you. And I think that says a great deal to the integrity of our investors and allowing us to work with our tenants the way that we have. And I mean, it's just been amazing. It's been a crazy 2020.
Yes, 100%.
Yes,
yeah.
I mean, unprecedented times. Nobody's ever experienced this before, especially in this industry. So I think that where we are, where we're going, just factually, the numbers say it all.
Right. Yeah. And I completely agree in that looking, and it's important to look at the AR numbers and eviction numbers pre this. That way we can accurately gauge our effect or the what COVID and this moratorium order has had on our eviction process. Okay.
I think it's good to point out too, sorry to interrupt, but like that the fact that a lot of these people that are experiencing eviction right now, the tenants, they're repeat offenders.
Yes.
Most necessarily, it's not people that have been affected by COVID, because again, Miranda has done a great job in her team of just working with people when we can, and our investors have been really understanding and things like that. These are people that were consistently habitually late prior to
COVID.
Yes.
Right. And I mean, and that's another thing that we kind of learned too through, and I think that was the big shocker back in March and April. It's like, hey, the people that are going to pay rent on time are going to pay rent on time.
Still paying.
No matter what happens, kind of thing. So, so the CDC order And if you've had the opportunity to read this just page turner, 36-page order, and Stephanie had already kind of gone into that a little bit, but it is very vague.
Very.
And it's very broad, doesn't give a lot of detail. So of course everyone's scrambling, trying to figure it out. And so Friday morning, probably about 2 Fridays ago, we get together. Hey, this is our plan. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to address it. And then Friday afternoon, Jefferson County comes out with a new mandate that changes everything really for us. And since the overwhelming majority of our properties, Alabama rental properties are in Jefferson County, obviously this was okay. So we got to regroup and kind of change our strategy. So I'm going to let Miranda kind of go into the Jefferson County mandate. And as of right now, it's still just Jefferson County that's released a type of mandate like this in Alabama, like in our territories.
Correct.
You know, there have been other municipalities, other counties across the country that are passing certain regulations. So basically, recap, the CDC current order as it stands, you're in eviction, you sign the declaration, and we halt eviction. That's basically what the order says. And so kind of walk us through, because the Jefferson County one is a lot more detailed. And you guys bear with us, we want to share all the information, but it's
super exciting.
Yes. Yeah. What did the Jefferson County mandate say?
Well, I mean, yeah, as Lindsay stated, the original, the CDC moratorium as it stands is in itself extremely vague. In this moratorium before Jefferson County's mandate, it stated that we had no responsibility at all to provide the tenant, number one, with a copy of the declaration, and two, with any interrogatories, which are the 7 things that they must agree to and qualify under.
Different 7 things.
Correct.
Yeah.
The 7 is a special number for us right now. With the Jefferson County mandate, I just want to say that I think that this mandate in itself speaks to the integrity of the justice of the peace that govern our city right now, and the fact that they're looking out for everybody, for the tenants, for the landlords, for the investors, for any property management company, to make sure that at the end of the day, we are doing everything that we need to be doing to do this the right and the legal way. So the mandate itself requires us at the time of the 7-day termination notice that we post a copy of this declaration and the interrogatories together right underneath this notice. We have to let the tenant know, here's the declaration. If you sign it, you're signing under the penalty of perjury. And these are the 7 things that you're going to have to agree to and provide proof of. It's, again, unprecedented times. We're just, trying to make sure that we stay as educated as possible about what's going on, hence the daily meetings, hence, the daily conference calls. But again, this Jefferson County mandate, I think is so beneficial and it's so helpful at this time.
And I do think that you're right in stating that it takes into equation not only the tenant, because that, we're not discounting that at all. If you've been negatively affected by this pandemic, then no, you shouldn't have to bear the consequences of an uncontrollable situation. However, you still have to put
it puts the onus back on the tenant.
Right. So, and protecting the tenant by the education, forcing landlords to give notice, and then also giving them, landlords a way to help. And we're going to get into that. So, when we sat down with her eviction attorney, we were like, okay, so what happens with this and this and this? Like, we'll find out, because they're learning with us too. So, all right. So Jefferson County, a tenant's in eviction, and they've signed the declaration. Okay. What happens then?
Well, first and foremost, we do not panic. Don't panic. If you receive a signed declaration, then the first thing that we do is immediately send it over to our attorney. First and foremost, we give them all of our information. It's what we got to do. But the one thing that is so important about this Jefferson County mandate is it gives the landlord by right the ability to challenge these declarations, which I think is so fantastic. Yes, we are here to help, but at the end of the day, if you're affected, let us know how you're affected, and we're just going to go from there. If you sign it, best case scenario, I mean, like Lindsay stated, we're learning at the same pace, at the same time as our attorneys. They can't give us a definite answer. It's just, we're going to do this together and we're going to see how it works. Best case scenario, you receive a signed declaration. It adds about 5 to 6 weeks to the case itself to file with the judge for a court date to prove and to provide documentation that the tenant is in fact affected the way that they say that they're affected.
If we challenge it.
If we challenge it, correct. So we're not going to challenge every single declaration because I think that would hinder us more than it would help us.
Right.
But we are going to challenge the ones who have not shown any payment history, any good faith payment, no communication, those habitual late payers, the habitual non-payers, the ones that were, their payment history was like this before COVID.
Right.
So it's the ones where we feel that it's just a closed, open and shut case. We're going to win it. We know that the declaration is false. Those are the ones that we're going to challenge, and our attorney is ready to face this head on and challenge it with us. So.
Okay. So what we challenge, and then, you know, what happens, what kind of consequences you get, like, so talk a little bit about that, and then I'm going to circle back to you for even more nitty gritty.
Yeah, high level here. Just again, kind of going back to the beginning, when we first got this order, we were like, oh my goodness, what do we do? Where do we go? We need to talk to the attorneys. We need to tread very lightly with this, because as we continued receiving more and more information, the more and more apparent it became that there are extremely high consequences and penalties for a misstep or an incorrect action taken on someone who truly is affected. I mean, we're talking upwards of $500,000. There are personal penalties that, you know, Miranda could face if she does something wrong. There's, you know, corporate penalties for us as a company. Our attorneys are at the same liability. So, you know, we have to be super careful. And again, nor do we don't want to punish or go after anyone who truly has been affected. But you know, there are, again, the habitual offenders. And so we want to protect our investors from that. And we want to be here for them for that. And so we're taking every single course of action that we can to be as legally compliant with the order, at the same time as enforcing the order too. So it's a very touchy subject, and we want to take all angles on it and just make sure we're educated, that our investors are educated, and that we're doing the right thing and that our tenants are educated, that we're doing the right thing for everybody, so that nobody, you know, gets in trouble in this scenario. So
and that was one thing that, you know, our attorneys were also saying too. It's like, hey, look, I wouldn't advise challenging all of them. I mean, you know, challenge
and they've been so supportive too. You know, we've worked with them for a really long time, and they're, you know, very well known within the Jefferson County court system, and so they trust us to only bring them legitimate, you know, challenges. And it's just, you know, we don't, again, like we were saying, we don't want to challenge everything. That's just not what we're going after. We're going to challenge the ones that we know are not being used correctly. Essentially, the declarations that really shouldn't be there. And we do that via fact, you know, black and white evidence, proof. So, and that's kind of where Miranda and her team are coming into play, with gathering those bits and pieces to make sure that we're all on the same page, and we're only challenging ones that really need to be challenged.
Okay, so we've bypassed, not bypass, but and just to kind of go back to the $500,000 fine. I mean, that was in the original CDC order, right? And it was like, hey, if you do anything, that I think that's kind of how vague the order was. And we're like, oh my gosh, we
can't call them.
We can't do anything. So once we've got the declaration, we say, hey, you've got the proof, you've verified employment, that they don't meet that 7 of the criteria. So we're going to challenge this one. Okay, what next?
What happens next? Oh my gosh.
Because we asked our attorney, and they're like, find out together.
Right. Yeah, we're going to do this at the same time.
Yeah. So what does that like step-by-step process look like?
So once we have proof, and again, I think one important fact to discuss is, yes, there are 5 interrogatories and 2 understandings, 7 in this Jefferson County mandate, what we have to post on the door. We only have to prove that the tenant doesn't meet 1 of these 7, just 1. This is not a 4 out of 6. This is not a 3 out of 6. If you get 1 out of 6 or 1 out of 7, you're good. You have to meet all 7. Mm-hmm. So that makes my job a little bit easier in trying to prove and get documentation that these usual suspects, the ones that we know without a doubt, are not being forthcoming about their situation. So once I obtain proof, and we'll do this through employment verifications, the really legitimate ways that prove without a doubt you're still employed, I'm going to get in contact with our attorney. I'm going to send them those documents. I'm going to send them that proof, and I'm going to tell them we want to challenge this. We want to move forward. What happens next? Essentially, the attorney has to file an answer with the judge in court for a court date to have the tenant prove they meet all 7 of these, and for us to prove you don't meet 1 of these, and this is our proof. Essentially, we're looking at about 5 weeks added on to the eviction. It's going to put us around about in November, but it's crucial to let our tenants know, yes, compassion is daily. It's part of the job in this industry, especially right now. But it's also, you've got rent that's due. We're not going to allow you to take advantage of this order. You're going to have to pay your rent. And at the end of the day, if you are not being forthcoming, we're going to call you out on it. We're going to challenge this order. We're going to protect our investor.
Right.
I mean, it's
absolutely.
just, yeah, it's what we got to do.
I completely agree. And
It's
the compassion side that I also agree that you do have to have. There's a human element to real estate investing. I mean, that's just accurate. So we get to the judge, says, okay, hey, you guys have proved it. Now what? I mean, we're 5 weeks already adding to the 90, what is it, 90 to 120 days, 120 days normally to go through the entire eviction process. So judge says, okay, I take your proof. You guys win the challenge. Win the challenge. I don't think that that's the legal term, actually.
She's got it. Win the challenge. We get that.
Yeah.
We're competitive here.
We really are.
But what is that? So what happens next?
So in that, mind you, there has not been a challenge done on this order yet. There has not been a given order on a challenge. But if we can prove that we have a closed shut case, the tenant, the declaration is not valid, I have no doubt in my mind that we will get possession in that courtroom that day.
So when you say get possession, does that mean like we get it that day, or what does that look like?
What that is we get an order by a judge that the tenant has to give us possession of the property back at that time in the courtroom. Now, we do give 7 days for the tenant to vacate that property, and it's just like it is in the good old days with the regular eviction. We get the possession order, but they do have 7 days to vacate the property. Mm-hmm. At that point, if they don't vacate, it's the same thing. We get in contact with the attorney's office. Hey, look, we verified these jokers are still there. File a writ with the sheriff's office and file it for set out, and then let's just move forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then we kind of get back
into
the normal process that you kind of went over. So we're adding 5 to 6 weeks. The order ends December.
We think.
Yeah. Knock on wood. Like Miranda said, our attorneys had not gone through a challenge, nor had they known of a challenge going through. So, and we haven't yet as well. So Stephanie, okay, the order's over on December 31st, and this is adding 6 weeks. Why challenge it? Like, why even go through the 5 to 6 week of here's the order, let's get on the judge, here's our rebuttal, I mean, there's like 6 or 7 steps that no doubt we're going to have to pay an attorney for.
Yeah, and this is a question that's kind of going through everyone's mind undoubtedly, because it was like when we were talking to the attorneys, at some point it went through my mind, like, why are we even doing this?
Yeah,
like why we're just adding time to the process for no known, outcome essentially. Right. But what we do know is that, it's such a tedious process. There's just so many unknowns still and everything, but our stance is that we need to protect our investors. We need to do everything we can to protect the rents that aren't coming in and to protect their cash flow and to protect their investment. And we feel like this is the best way to do that, by challenging those cases that truly do need to be challenged because the tenant isn't meeting those interrogatories, essentially not making their best attempts at paying rent. Because what we foresee happening, and again, this is all foreshadowing, we don't know, but if it truly, if they sign this declaration, they don't pay their rent, the eviction is postponed until next year. When it comes to time for that money judgment, when we go back to court and say, well, they owe us $6,000 because there's been 6 months that have gone by that they've been in the property and haven't been paying rent, the judge is then going to take it and say, well, they were affected, we need to lower this balance. But if we go ahead and challenge it and say, no, there's been no efforts, this is not actually accurate because they're still employed, they're taking advantage, that kind of thing, we feel like this is the correct stance to take to be able to get that full money judgment, get the collections, get the garnishment at the end of this, wherever that may be.
Right.
Wherever the end is, this is the best course of action to take to be able to go back and claim those funds, to collect on those funds. The people who were truly affected, we don't know what's going to happen to that money at the end of the day. There may be another part of this that comes out and says, well, hey, 50% of it is going to be forgiven, or, we have no idea. I'm clearly making that up, but there could be a whole nother part of that we don't even know or see yet. And so the ones that we really truly know and have facts and solid proof that it's inaccurate or falsely completed, then we need to do our part to make sure that our investors get that money back at the end of this, when we can go back for that money judgment, when the docket finally calms down and we can get through all this together and go back and get the money rightfully where it belongs.
Right. And that's a really good point too, because it does make you wonder. It's like, hey, okay, why are we going to just, accrue attorney fees, and, we're still not going to get our property back.
Pushing the time out.
Right. So that's, honestly, that's an excellent point, because if we can go ahead and proactively prove that they did not meet this order, then we have a better claim come 2021. And fingers crossed, 2021 is a normal year that we can, we can kind of go back to the old ways. Okay, so what if we don't have that evidence? We have no evidence that, that they were not affected. Maybe we can't do an employment verification, or they've been making some payments, or, you know what I mean? Like, we have no evidence, so we can't really challenge, and they've signed a declaration. So where are we with that?
Oh, goodness. So in those circumstances, the eviction is going to be in abatement. It's going to be on hold till January 2nd. We're not going to pull the tenant out of eviction. They're still going to be with the attorney's office in eviction. It's just, we can't proceed forward with any legal action until after the expiration of the moratorium. At that time, while they're in eviction, they've got a signed declaration. They're reaching out to the attorney at this point. They know they're in eviction. The ones who have valid declarations, we don't have proof that they're not being forthcoming. They're talking to the attorneys. They're working out payment arrangements. They're working out payment plans. They're providing them with the documentation that they need to show that, yes, they are making their best efforts to make payments, to get it resolved, to not get kicked out of their property or evicted. And we've seen that so far already with a couple in eviction right now. So at that point, we let the attorney handle it. They make payments. We can't refuse payments at that time under this moratorium, because that's their proof that they're making their best efforts.
I was just about to ask that. So, yeah, so, I mean, but in, prior to this order, though, could you take partial payments? That's a really big change in the whole
That's a
process.
huge change.
Yeah.
No,
There's
previously.
another wrench for you.
Right, thanks guys. Previously, in the good old days with an eviction, you're at the attorney. We legally cannot speak to you. We cannot talk to you. We cannot take a payment from you whatsoever, because of the legal factor of, as soon as the tenant gets sent to eviction, their balance increases with those court costs and attorney fees. And again comes the education with the tenants. I like to let them know, hey, look, before we send you to eviction, I want you to understand you're going to get $1,500 roughly added to your balance right off the top in court costs and attorney fees. So let's work out a payment plan. But no, we could not accept payments. It would be balance in full, or they're moving forward with going to court in front of a judge to get possession and eventually set out. The biggest difference now is once you're in eviction, we've got that signed declaration, then we can't refuse payment. You can work out a payment plan with the attorney's office, and it's not going to stop eviction, but that payment is going to be applied to your back balance. And so it's good for the investor that we can still get that, even if it's a little bit at a time, we can still get those payments coming in to the investor while they're in eviction, and it's not going to stop the process. It's not going to start all over again.
Yeah.
That's the biggest change.
That was really good news when we heard that on the forum. The beginning of this week. It was really exciting to hear that we could actually take a payment and not change where we were in the process.
Right.
You know, whether it's $10, $50, $100, normally those payments aren't substantial, but at this point, you know, if your tenant is not going to be getting out until next year, and we know that, then I'll take the $10, I'll take the $20, we'll take whatever we can get, while the tenant is living in the property.
So okay, prior they pay, eviction stops, we have to start that whole process over again. This order does change that, but go back to really quick. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Go back to they've signed the declaration, they're working out a payment plan, and we just wait, like.
So yes, essentially.
We don't challenge it, so.
We don't challenge it. We're waiting on those payments to come in from the tenant, from the attorney's office. And mind you, they're still in eviction. We're not losing our place in line, but we cannot move forward legally until after that moratorium is over.
The line doesn't start getting gone through again until January 2nd, essentially. So it just.
Yeah. All right. Man, got a good bit of questions. Okay. All right. So really quick though, this is the last, I guess, stack of questions that we've got. Maybe it is. I don't know. I'm a Spartan investors. All right. I've got 10 beautiful cash flowing Spartan Invest houses. Right.
Yeah.
And so what does this mean for me? What does this mean for all of our investors out there?
Well, that's a loaded question, Lindsay.
Yeah, it's really.
There are a lot of different things this can mean to different people. It just depends whether or not your properties are vacant, whether they're occupied, whether you've got a tenant in eviction, whether you're getting an approval, you're waiting on an approval right now. If you have 10 properties, chances are you may have some properties in different stages. So, but a lot of it is just going to depend on the situation, and there's the environment we're in is changing so quickly and different things, but we want to control the controllables, right? We can't control what Jefferson County is going to do. We can't control what, the election is going to do in a few weeks, in a little while, but we can't, there are things that we can't control about this situation. And so we can control, some of the things inside these four walls. So what we have done here at ARP, here at Spartan, is ramped up our team. That's the number one thing that we felt like, hey, the least we can do is get more people on our team to attack this thing head on. So we hired 2 new people on Miranda's team, and we have 3 new client services managers on the customer service side. So we want to make sure our investors are being communicated with on a timely manner, as much as possible, as much information as we have on your particular property, on your given circumstance. And from the ARP property management side, we want to be able to dedicate a full-time person to calling our tenants, to making sure that they know what's going to happen if they sign this declaration. What does that mean for them? What are they going to be asked to provide when we do go to court, if we do go to court? What are they going to have to prove? We want them to be educated on the situation, because a lot of people don't look past the title. They don't look past the headline. Hey, eviction's halted until January 2nd. Yay, I don't have to pay rent. Well, no, that's not what that means. You got to there's a lot of not super fun reading involved with what all is involved with this moratorium. And so we want to make sure that we are educating our tenants on that. And so we've got a new full-time person that is dedicated to calling our tenants with past due balances, talking to them about their balance. What kind of payment can you give us? Anything. We will literally work with anything right now, because that's one of the things that the county put in place. Take all payments. It's not going to change the process. And so, hey, do you have an extra $100 you could pay every whatever you have? And then what are the consequences if you do sign the declaration and it doesn't work? Hey, your rent will come due at some point. People, just things that are common misconceptions with this moratorium. So we are taking the stance here that we need to educate everyone, make sure that everyone's on the same page. And with our investors too, we want to make sure they're getting all the communication that we can possibly give them about this, in forums like this, from the CSMs, the client service managers. But at the same time, we need to make sure that our investors know too that, we can't give you information that we don't have, right? So we're all learning together. And, in a normal eviction, there's a lot of waiting periods and waiting time and on certain items that we're just like waiting to find out on, and we don't have any updates or answers. And this is kind of the same thing. There's so many unknowns, and there's so many things that we're going to face that we don't even know yet. And so if we do have different information, Miranda and her team are making as many notes as possible in the tenant ledger. Every conversation we have with the tenant, your client service manager will give you all of the details that they have, but be prepared to not have an update, from your September call to your October call. Just be prepared for that. We may still be waiting. We said our attorney was very clear when he said, we do anticipate it to be 5 to 6 weeks added onto the process if we do challenge. If we don't challenge, there's definitely not going to be any updates until after the new year. But our team is still out there. They're still doing vacancy checks. They're still calling Alabama Power to make sure that the power is still on. We're still driving by the properties physically every single week. We have so many ways that we can verify these things and get the information to our investors, but we can only share information that we have. So we have that. What we're doing here is we're just preparing for the worst and we're striving for the best. Preparing for the worst always. And, hope is not a strategy, so we're striving.
I love that.
Yeah, so.
I love that. Yeah, sorry. So if you've got any questions, sorry, it is like pouring. Of course, we would start
a monsoon.
this and be in the most, the top building most affected by, so we've got a few questions, and all of them are surrounding the idea of kind of like, have you had tenants be evicted and go on smear campaigns? Taking COVID, taking advantage, getting the sympathy card. How does that look? How do we combat that as a company? And I want to refer to you. I want to say something first.
Okay.
No, I do want to definitely address that this is a very delicate case. And I don't know a better way to put that, but we are not blind to the fact that there is a very real issue with COVID and the effect that it's had on people. Absolutely. And that's why when we shut down our office, hey, we were a necessary business. Hey, we still shut down for 2.5 months. We shut everything down, and then come April and May, we discounted the rent and some of it we ate. The company just paid for. So we discounted the rent if you were able to pay on time and stuff. So and Miranda's done a really good job too of, we've been holding evictions. If a tenant's reached out to us and said, hey, I have been affected, they are on payment plans. Like there is a handful, there's a ton of tenants right now that this is not going to affect.
Right.
You know, that we are not going to send to eviction if they are if they're communicating with us.
Right.
If they're letting us know, hey, I've lost my job. You know, as soon as everything happened, we sent out emails, notices, portal information, surveys, text messages. Have you been affected?
Right.
What can we do? Blah, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Have your hours, has your pay. So taking that into consideration, and knowing that was our first go-to. You know, that the human, you know, aspect of the rental property and the tenants and our occupants, that taking that stance first, we feel comfortable defending any action that if you say, hey, look, I genuinely feel, because we know we're not going to challenge all of these. There are people been affected.
Right. I mean, there's no way that we're even going to have the manpower or the time to challenge all of these, and it wouldn't be beneficial.
How many have we gotten? Sorry, I meant to ask that earlier.
We've gotten 6 signed declarations.
So, okay. So that's not horrible. We anticipated a bit more. It's not horrible. They're trickling in.
They're trickling in one by one. And you know what? The most reassuring aspect of that for me is, as they're coming in, you've got the tenants who got the eviction notice on their door, who read the declaration, who truly understand what they're signing. They read the interrogatories. I had a young woman call me yesterday, sent me over the signed declaration, and then all 5 parts to the interrogatory. And then she's like, I understand 6 and 7. And sure enough, I look at her documents. She truly has been affected. For 5.5 months has been affected.
That's awful.
And in that circumstance, please understand that we are compassionate. I will work with you. From the very beginning of a tenant's time with us in ARP and their 24-month lease, I make it clear. At the end of the day, communication is key. There's no embarrassment here. You cannot be afraid to talk to me and tell me what's going on, because at the end of the day, I'm going to be the one that either sends you or saves you. So I'm your lifesaver at this point. You got to let me know what's going on, and I will work with you. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's been times that I've given arrangements, and the tenants have honestly surprised me, and it's been amazing, you know, and that just reaffirms what we do on a daily basis,
right.
And taking those arrangements.
Yeah, and so it's kind of more like the question goes on as far as, you know, how from a public relations standpoint do we I guess cover if we do an eviction, and I do think that it's important to note too that there are 2 sides to a real estate investment. You know, there's the investor who owns the asset and the property, and then there's the tenant. And I think doing everything that we possibly can to help and assist both parties. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
You know.
And I, not to prolong this question anymore, but I think it's I think it's important too that, you know, this doesn't happen overnight. An eviction doesn't happen overnight. And during COVID, it was a 6-month process for a lot of people. You know, we had people pre-COVID. You know, we've got 1 or 2 that were pre-COVID that are still in their houses. And so, you know, yeah, it's never fun, and it looks bad from a PR standpoint. Oh, you're setting people out during this horrible time, but this wasn't a COVID thing, and it wasn't like, hey, we knocked on your door the day your rent was late. This is a 6-month thing. You've had 10 warnings that this was going to happen, and I think as far as, you know, the smear campaign part of it, I've really only had backlash like from 1 or 2 people, you know, saying, and I'm sure Miranda, you've gotten plenty of calls saying, how dare you do this,
right,
and that kind of thing. And we had one person kind of publicly do that to us. But again, we take both stances. We have to protect our investors, and sending out notices, you know, sending out notices is sending out notices. It didn't go to the attorney yet. It's just a notice. Hey, this is your past due rent. And it's not forgiven. It was all part of the miscommunications. Hey, you know, a lot of people just thought none of the rents were going to come due. No, the rents are still due. There's just some moratoriums, the evictions are postponed, that kind of thing. So yeah, we have seen a little bit of this, but again, it's not, you know, you're 1 day late, you're a month late even, and we knock on your door and throw your stuff out. That is not the way it works. It's a very, very long process before that happens. And there have been a lot of notifications that it's in place. So,
and that's why the education aspect, even with the tenant, especially on the tenant side, is so critical to let them know that this is the process. This is how much time you have. This is what this means, and then this is your option. And they know, and I mean, it just with the smear campaign, you just got to handle it professionally with a grain of salt and move on.
it's part of property management.
That's right.
And
Right.
it's just part of it.
That is just part of property management. And I know that all of the investors out there listening, and especially those who have ever managed their own investment properties, are saying, preach. So, all right, thank you guys so much. That's all we've got time for. I told you, thank you so much for bearing with us in the nitty gritty, but this stuff is very, very important if you own rental properties and investment, and especially given that Jefferson County now differs with their mandate. So all of this information, super important. Thank you to Miranda for joining us and laying out all of the nitty gritty to this order and the mandate. Guys, if you are interested in learning more about real estate, lending, alternative methods of passive income, please join us for the Summit 2 weeks virtual event. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Miranda. Bye, guys. Bye. You guys have a good one. How come